Okay, so recently I was playing Starfield again because I had some computer issues and I really couldn't play my games as I normally do. So I decided to play something single player, something that didn't matter if there was input lag or not, and Starfield was the game. So I did a whole bunch of changes to a couple of ships, a couple of my more popular ships, and this one here is the Corvette. Some of you may recognize. This one I significantly improved, I think. And I'll go into the shipbuilder and kind of illustrate what changes I made and the decision making process for why I changed it the way I did. After I do this one, I'm going to do the SDF1 changes. Go over those. Some of you may recognize what I did already. Oh my god. Look at this leg. Wow, the OBS just really lags it even more than. And I am doing this on GeForce now, so that's part of the reason why it's so terrible. I should didn't even have this. So essentially, that's the major difference between my old one, my old design, and this one. So that's the way it was there, and I didn't have these pieces here. I had the ones that are very similar to these, but they're wider and they perfectly match the shape of this piece. I wonder if they have them here at this place. And then there's that. Jesus, the leg. Oh my god, it's terrible. Um, so that's the piece I used to have in this place. So it was before it was essentially that. Okay, and that doesn't look too bad, right? But I wanted what I wanted to do. What I wasn't happy about was this: the front part here, past this nose piece. It just sort of like it goes flat for too long, and I didn't like that. I felt like that sort of like was very very different from the actual Corvette. So then I played around with pushing these up. It's almost not playable with this much lag. Jesus, I can't even click on things. There's so much lag. And I threw this in between. So that's the other part of what I wasn't happy with. Oh my god, it won't even let me. Okay. Um, this sort of like canyon, or kind of like a gap valley in between the armor slabs. It's sort of like stuck out too much. It was too loud in the design, if you know what I mean by being loud. So I threw that in there to sort of fill it in some with a tapered piece, right? And I thought that much better also matched up with the cockpit because if you look at the Corvette cockpit, the actual Corvette, it slopes backwards. So it starts off jutted out forward like a big chin, and then it slopes backwards. And this particular cockpit is the opposite. So it slopes it juts out high, and then the slope is actually towards the bottom instead of the top. It has a slope going from about the upper 25% of it is kind of sloped back, but the majority of it is sloping backwards at the bottom. Putting this piece in front of it though kind of gives it a look like it is jutted out forward at the lowest point and then slopes backwards as it gets higher. So especially now, obviously when you look up very close, you can see that it's all separate, and it kind of loses that effect that I was sort of hoping to get when you look very close at it. But as you pan back, it sort of more and more sort of resembles the bridge, the outward appearance of the bridge on the actual Corvette. Now regarding these two armor slabs on the either side here, because they're now pushed forward more, I didn't want to have this particular piece under them, because if you look at the actual Corvette, these armor slabs sort of jut out over the midsection here, not be flush with it, but jut out over it and kind of hang over it a bit. And fortunately, there's a piece that's very similar to the one I just took out, but it's not as wide, so it does actually create that effect of the armor jutting out over the midsection. And what's beautiful is it has a weapon attachment spot right on it, and in the spot that you would want it to be to match up with where the weapon attachment is on the actual Corvette. Now, prior to that change, I had that side-mounted weapon down here, which, although it's kind of in the right place lengthwise, it is a little too low compared to the way it is on the actual Corvette. So this is a better matchup there. On top of that, you'll notice that the weapons themselves are different in this case, and that's because I was trying to squeeze in actually more powerful weapons on this design, so that it actually plays and feels more like the Corvette in fights. Because obviously the Corvette in Elite Dangerous is, no ship hits as hard as it, essentially. I know, Anaconda, but, let's just say Corvette for this to make things easier. So I wanted it to hit harder. These particular weapons here, they're basically the strongest weapon in the game, or close to it. There's two weapons that are stronger, but they're very strong. And these ones here, these ones are also one of the strongest weapons. They're actually stronger than the bigger ones, oddly. I think. Anyway, they're very close, and they're very, very strong. And much stronger than the ones that I had on before. Although the ones I had on before had a longer range, the difference in the range is minimal. And based on how you would want to play this, which is kind of in the face of the targets that you're blowing up, the range is not as important. Other builds that you want to kite with might not be as well served to have these particular weapons. You might want to keep the weapons that were on it before, but these ones here just really crush. And of course, I'm keeping the same ones I had before back here, which are supposed to resemble two huge hardpoints. Even though in game, in Starfield, those are actually 4 weapons, not 2. But they're kind of I talked about this before in the original video covering this ship. But they're supposed to resemble, like the way they're configured there, they're supposed to resemble 2 long, huge weapons instead of 4. Right. Now, there's actually more to talk about too that you can't see. How I improved this ship from something like 85 mobility to 100 without changing the whole aesthetic regarding the engines. So I was trying very hard to keep it so that only these two engines would be showing. So these are the only ones that you would see like fire come out of. These are the only visible sources of propulsion on this ship. Now, it was very important to me to keep it that way because these are the ones I think most resemble the actual engines on the real Corvette. Now, I know that the slots are going vertical here, and on the real Corvette they're horizontal. But I think that difference is a small price to pay to keep everything else as close to the real Corvette as possible. Otherwise, what you're going to have back here is a bunch of circular rocket nozzle type looking engines, regardless of which ones you pick. So I think this is by far the best, and they have just a great shape that sort of very closely resembles the real Corvette. You might also notice back here that right here, instead of the grav drive, I have another hab, and I'll explain why in a sec. And I have this little structural piece, which sort of more closely resembles like a horizontal sort of jutting out of at the top of the last piece up here, which is kind of what it looks like on the back of the real Corvette. So there's a little bit of a indent going from this piece down to here, which is exactly the way the real Corvette is too. Although on the real Corvette, it indents towards the center of this piece as opposed to being just flat, and with the left and the right side being kind of pushed out further backwards. But you know, that's pretty minor. Now, talking about how I got the 100 mobility, I'll just see if I can take off the top half of this ship. Actually, I really only need to take off the armor slabs, I think. Now, I'll tell you why I wanted to get 100 mobility, because before I was happy with like 85, just because like it's a big ship, and obviously the real Corvette is a bit slow too, you know, compared to other ships, even if it's in its own class. But it was very agile when it came to turning compared to its other ships. It was just not very fast when it came to like top speed and boost speed. Um, and mobility in this game does affect turn speed, so I wanted to kind of get that turn speed as high as possible. Um, and basically, you can turn with this thing just as fast almost as any ship. So how I did that was on the previous model, I had one of these SA4330 engines that looked like that. You know, I had one of those to get it to 85 mobility. So I tried to get another to get it even higher. And I knew I definitely had enough power to do it, because it takes, I think, it takes 2 per. And these take 2 per, despite how big they are, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, so I could fit the power, and it became, where do I place them inside here? And obviously, it's going to be important to cover up their sort of exhaust, their, I don't know what the word is, but like how big and bright the plume is that shoots out of the back of the engine. I want to hide that as much as possible. Now, I've tried positioning these at basically every other spot along this chain, and tried to think of any other spot on the ship to put it, but there is no other spot I could think of to put it that hides all that as well as this location here. Now, the other thing that's important is that you have the right sort of variant of these things. You need the fat. See how there's two like ports that the plumes, the fire comes out of or whatever. There's one that's larger than the other. You need to change it to the variant that puts the larger nozzle inside. Okay, and the same thing for the other side. They're inverse, like sort of mirror images of one another there. In that way. Now, once you get it like this, a certain problem. It's not really a problem. It's just it's there is a bullet you have to bite though to do this, and that is by placing this here. There becomes no way to then connect the halves inside so that you can then walk to this one and then to this one. So you're not going to be able to go into the engineering section and walk around in there that that goes all the way to the nose and whatnot. You won't be able to access any of that. If that's important to you, if the inside of the ship is just as important as the outside of the ship for you, you might want to just keep the old design in that particular way. Like just forget about adding this second SA4330 engine and just keep it the way it was. But other than that, I moved this particular piece to this side. I believe it was on the other side before, and then I hid the grav drive right there. And when it came to the filler, I tried to, as much as possible, have 2x1s instead of just multiple 1x1s. And that way you can then have then you can select the variants that have like either passenger slots or more crew slots. But this thing already has 2 of these 2x1s devoted to crew. So this thing can theoretically have 10 crew members working. You'll never use that many. In fact, you probably would never use more than 6. But just in case, the maximum power you can get out of it, if you could possibly fit a crew, would be more than 6. So, so I wanted to make sure that I was not limited in that way. So I basically I have 2 of these 2x1s on the ship are the crew one, and then every other one is a passenger slot one. So if I ever wanted to do a passenger mission, then I would have more space for them. It's whatever though. It's whatever. But you should definitely not put multiple 1x1s on this ship as much as possible, because if you do, that just adds mass, and mass may actually become a problem for you if you end up doing that. Because look, this has a mass of 5, and that's a 1x1, and that has a mass of 8. So you save 2 mass by having a 2x1 instead of 2 1x1s. All right. And if memory serves, mass was somewhat of an issue for this ship, but it's not a huge issue. All right. So the other thing I'll mention too is on the bottom, you see what I have here? On that piece that has the snap points for weapons on the bottom, which is kind of like one of the more important discoveries I made when I was trying to build this ship in the first place, looking for some pieces that can have snap points on the bottom. This one particular piece that has snap points at the bottom that I went over in my original video, it has 2 weapon snap points, not just 1. And what I did was I took the fatter of the 2 new weapon types I put it behind the smaller one, and it kind of looks like an extra large single weapon instead of 2. They're kind of one behind the other, and the way they kind of slope forward almost looks like a huge weapon, right? And that's what it is. Like on the Corvette, on the real Corvette, as we know, it has a large hardpoint on the bottom. These 2 ones on the side are mediums, and then the ones on the front there are smalls. And then, of course, you have the 2 huges on the back, top. So having it shaped and positioned and ordered in this way, it most closely resembles the actual hardpoints on the real Corvette. And staying as true to the real Corvette was always or staying as true to the real ship in every case is always one of my top priorities. So like, I was pretty happy with the fact that it was able to kind of fit it all like that, and for it to make sense in those ways. Yeah, so that's essentially it. That's essentially all the changes there. Not much more to talk about. I could go on the inside, and in fact, I think I will. I will. And by the way, this thing absolutely slaps. It hits quite a bit harder than it did in the original version. All right, so I'll board at the bottom, and I'll make my way to the cockpit.
Is there a way to go faster than the speed of light? And none of that cab tech cheating?
Alright, so as soon as you get in, you have to go up. And I'm having a hard time steering because of input lag. Samco, the worst companion you could possibly ever have. Okay, so coming up, here is a crew section. This is, I believe, one of the 2x1s that has 4 crew stations on it. This is the center of the ship, so the cockpit's actually directly above. And here would be the well, if you're in the ship looking forward, this would be on the right hand side. And this is just a 2x1 all in one. So this is like a bed and whatnot. And this is probably just a 1x1. This is like the 1x1 that goes up to the sort of the wing. It's not a wing, but for lack of a better word. And right below it is another 2x1 all in one. So it's got more beds and stuff. So you can, and it has 2 passenger slots.
Yeah, the way you handle things, not bad.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of the best. Alright, so I'll go up to the cockpit. And there should be another 2x1 crew station up here. Yes, right here. As you can see. This is it, another crew station. So this, you could potentially have 10 crew members on the ship. At least you're not limited by the ship for how many crew you can have, that's for sure. Alright, so this is the cockpit. Yeah, and that's the whole thing on the inside. Now, before you could, like I said, you could go like all the way out to the nose. And there's a 3x1 like engineering bay, which was, and I picked the engineering bay on purpose because it was kind of cool to have all the engineering crap like in the front, because that kind of makes sense. Like you would think there would be some, like the guts of the ship would be up front like that. And I think the 3x1 is the only piece that actually has like an engineering sort of area. That looks like, guts of the ship, pipes and stuff like that. So that's why I put that up there in the first place. Yeah, so if you don't put a 3x1 up there, you're not even going to have the option to. There's no other place I don't think you could fit a 3x1 on the ship if you wanted to have like if you wanted to be, you wanted to prioritize the interior of the ship above everything else, and you wanted to make sure that there was like an engineering section in the back or something. I don't think that's even an option because there's no space for a 3x1 like that. So here's the new ship taking off. Yeah, just beautiful. Like, that's something else I want to say about this particular ship is, the whole idea was to make it as close to the Corvette as possible, and that's really the only thing I worried about. But it just turned out that what I ended up getting, it was very difficult to sort of like try to get it very close to the real Corvette. Like the Starship engine for making ships, like the shipbuilder itself, does not lend itself well to the Corvette's shape. It just doesn't have the pieces don't have the angles you need to really closely match it. But what I ended up getting was a ship that I liked for its own sake. Like I really, really like this particular ship. In fact, it's my. I mean, I can't say it's more. I like it better than the SDF-1 because that's just the whole. That you can't compare anything to that ship because it's like comparing movies to Star Wars. Like you can't. It's in a league of its own. Like that's in a total league of its own. It's not fair to compare it to anything. But this ship, other than that, is by far my most favorite ship that I ever tried building. Its shape is just very satisfying, and it's so strong, and it really does feel like the Corvette too in almost every single way. Um, Essentially, this is the Starfield Corvette. Like this is as close. This is as good as it gets, and it gets pretty good. So I'll kind of show you the weapons firing. Here's the two huge hardpoints on the top. It even has the cadence of having two huge multi cannons, and that's the most common weapon that people put on their Corvettes. Although I didn't, I have two huge lasers because I'm not a freak like that. But anyway, and here's the energy weapons on the sides, front, top, and the one huge on the bottom, or one large. And firing them all at the same time. Yeah. Now, one thing that I wanted to do, but I couldn't figure out a way to really make it work, is I wanted to put a different reactor in this thing. So this thing has the same reactor that it did the first time I made it, which is that one that when it's right there on the bottom. You can't see it too well. Maybe if I... Yeah, so there on the right next to the landing gear, you can see the bottom of that reactor. Now, if I had to put the reactor I actually wanted to put in there, or try to squeeze it in there, it wouldn't look nearly as good as that. Because this particular one has like walls on the outside. It looks like just a big ass cube, that's 2 modules high and 1 long and wide. Okay, so there's no other reactor that works as well in order to create a kind of, as much as possible, sort of like smooth outside skin. If I had taken the reactor I wanted, there would be all kinds of spaces you could see into. You can't even paint this other reactor I wanted to put in there. So it's going to look like a brass color, like a bronze color, and it's going to have a bunch of like pipes sticking into it. And the reason I wanted to get, and on top of that this reactor I'm referring to, it doesn't have any snap points on the top or the bottom. It has only snap points on the sides. and it has no snap points on the back of it. So your options, like I don't think I could even put it anywhere. That even if I wanted to, like make the ship look awful because of it. But the reason I wanted that particular reactor is because it's got the most hull hit points, and I only found out about this recently. So this one particular reactor, now you have a really good angle to see the bottom of the reactor here with this lighting. But yeah, no, I only recently found out about how much hull hit points this particular reactor has that I'm referring to. I was watching. There's a YouTuber. Check him out. His name is the Ship Technician. He's got great analysis on different mechanics of the way ship weapons and engines work, and really breaks it down. And very autistic, but and I use that word as a compliment in this case. Really gets into the nitty gritty of how strong things are, and like how strong they are, and why they're strong. Like what is it that makes them strong in these particular ways, and analyzes everything from about 3 different angles, which has been actually useful to me. Like I have been able to use some of the things that I've seen in his videos to make my ships now stronger, and it has given me ideas for basically making my ships perform better when you're flying them. It's been a challenge though to do that too, because these pieces that are stronger don't look as good sometimes. In some cases, they may even look better. Like for example, these guns on the bottom, put one in front of the other, kind of look like a large hardpoint instead of like a medium and a small when you look at it from certain angles, right? So I really like that. But anyway, this particular reactor I wanted, it's got something like 1900 hull hit points. And this particular one that's on the ship right now, it's either 1100 or 1300. I forget which. I think it's 1300. But obviously an extra 500 hull hit points. You could never even approach that trying to put anything else on the ship. Like everything else only gives you like 5, 10, or 15 hull hit points. This reactor is really, that's how you get the lion's share of your hull hit points, is from your reactor. So I really wanted to get it on the ship, but ultimately this ship is more about looks than function. It's more about form than function. However, its function in many ways is the primary, because I really did not have to compromise on the function at all, except in that one very isolated specific way. So this thing is less functional than it would be if it had that reactor. It's less tanky. Its hull is less tanky. But I mean, for me, that's a very easy choice. That's a very easy sacrifice to make when the end result looks this good. So yeah, but that reactor would really interfere with the aesthetic. Now, since you might have caught a little peek at it, you can kind of see the engine plumes on the inside there a little bit from the engines that are up front. But that's all you get. Like that's all you get. It's very easy to not see that. And here's it boosting. The plumes don't get any brighter than they are right now. And it's very well hidden. It's clearly very well hidden. It works. It looks like the only source of propulsion is these 2 big things in the back, which is perfect. I'm going to flip it over where the sun's on the bottom and do a little outro. Alright guys, there's the new and improved Federal Corvette. I hope you like it. I certainly do. And coming up next is the SDF-1 improvements.